Before anything else, hit that subscribe button, like this video, turn on the notifications bell, and if at any point this story touches something inside you, comment below and share it with someone who needs to hear it. This isn't just another story. This is your mirror. I wasn't looking for anything that night. Not love, not adventure, not even connection. I just wanted to breathe, to be somewhere else for a while. But life has a wild way of shifting everything when you least expect it. And what started as a quiet drink in a random bar ended in a night that cracked me open in ways I still don't fully understand. They say the most powerful moments aren't loud, they're felt. This isn't fiction. This is a true story. A sensual tale of tension, vulnerability, and a kind of empowerment that you don't read in books. You live. And trust me, it's not what you think. I crossed paths with someone who reminded me of something I didn't know I'd lost myself. So if you've ever had an unexpected night, if you've ever questioned your emotions, or if you've stood in front of your own reflection asking, who am I really? Then stay with me. Because what you're about to hear isn't just my emotional narrative, it might be yours too. It's funny how some nights begin with zero expectations, and yet they rewrite entire chapters of who you are. I wasn't even planning on staying long at that bar. But then he walked in. Not with noise, not with flair, but with presence. There was something in the way he looked at me that said more than 1,000 introductions ever could. That kind of emotional tension that makes your chest tighten without really knowing why. He wasn't young. He wasn't trying. But every word that came from his mouth hit somewhere deeper than logic. You know when someone speaks and you feel seen? That's exactly what happened. And in that moment, this didn't feel like just another story time. It felt like the beginning of a transformative experience. One of those sensual tales you don't plan but don't resist either. We barely spoke, yet it felt like I knew the rhythm of his silence. Every time our eyes met, it was like the rest of the room blurred out. There was subtle sensuality in every glance, a strange comfort in the unknown. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I felt alive. As if all the pages of my emotional narrative were being flipped one by one, revealing a new chapter one didn't know I needed. And so, when he asked if I wanted to leave the noise of the bar behind, I didn't hesitate. Not out of recklessness, but out of awareness. I wasn't chasing excitement. I was accepting connection. That kind of unexpected night that lingers long after the sun rises. And if you've ever followed a feeling you couldn't name, then maybe, just maybe, you've been there too. The second I stepped into his apartment, I felt it. That quiet kind of warmth that doesn't scream for attention, but invites you in. Everything about that place was intentional. The lighting, the scent, the silence. And I don't mean luxury. I mean presence. He wasn't trying to impress. He was just grounded. That's rare. Especially in a world where most people are too busy performing to connect. He offered me tea, not wine. And that simple gesture made something inside me pause. It wasn't about seduction. It was about attention. Real, deliberate attention. The kind that looks you in the eye when it asks how your day was. I realized then, this wasn't just another emotional narrative. This was a mirror. One that reflected back everything I'd been too distracted to notice in myself lately. As we talked, slowly, calmly, I began to feel parts of me I hadn't touched in a long time. Desire, yes, but not the impulsive kind. I'm talking about that deep, cellular craving for presence. To be with someone and not have to hide or perform. That's where the female empowerment started to wake up inside me. Because when you're safe, you stop shrinking. You take up space with grace. So, When his fingers brushed mine just for a second, it didn't feel invasive. It felt like agreement. Silent, but clear. Like two people remembering something ancient they'd almost forgotten. And if you've ever felt that kind of unexpected connection, you already know. It doesn't ask for permission. It just happens. Almost like it was waiting for you to notice. The next morning, sunlight painted soft lines across his wooden floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding a warm cup of coffee he'd made, black, no sugar, just how I liked it. He handed it to me without asking, and that detail stayed with me. There's something magnetic about being known without having to explain yourself. A kind of emotional tension that feels less like pressure and more like curiosity. We talked about nothing and everything. About music, old movies, and the way certain smells trigger memories you didn't know you were holding on to. Then came his invitation, a casual get-together with a few friends later that evening. He said it like it meant nothing, but his eyes said otherwise. It wasn't the invite that intrigued me. It was the tone, the pause, the unspoken something hidden between his words. I could have said no. I had things to do. I had plans. But something in me, something quiet yet undeniable, chose to stay. Not from impulsiveness, but from a deeper voice I'd ignored for too long. I wasn't seeking validation or adventure. I was choosing myself, my curiosity, my right to live stories worth telling. You know those moments that whisper this could change everything? Yeah, this was one of them. And as he left the room to make another pot of coffee, I looked at the clock and felt time slow down. Not out of anxiety, but presence. That sense that the day ahead wasn't just another Sunday. It was a portal. A space where story time meets real-life decisions. Where something seemingly small, like a simple invitation, might be the very thing that awakens what's been asleep inside you for far too long. I stepped into the shower, not just to cleanse my body, but to clear my mind. The water wasn't just warm, it was grounding. I let it run over my skin like a reset button. And as the steam filled the bathroom, I started listening, not to music or noise, but to my own thoughts. That's rare these days, isn't it? We get so caught up in the rush that we forget to check in with the woman staring back at us in the mirror. There, with droplets sliding down my back, I realized this wasn't about him.
It was about me.
About showing up fully, without layers of performance or people-pleasing. There was subtle sensuality in simply being alive, aware, open. This wasn't vanity. It was presence. And maybe that's the most radical form of female empowerment, to stand in front of your reflection and say, I see you. And you're ready. I reached for the towel slowly, like I didn't want to break the moment. Because it wasn't just about getting dressed. It was about choosing who I was going to be that night. We don't always realize it, but moments like these shape us. They ask quietly, will you follow the script you've always known, or will you write something new? A sensual tale isn't about the body, it's about the choice to be present within it. As I did my hair, applied just a touch of perfume, and slipped into a dress that felt like me, I smiled. Not a dramatic, showy smile. A quiet one. The kind that comes when you know you're stepping into something unknown, but you trust yourself anyway. And if you've ever stood in front of that mirror wondering what the night might hold, have you been there too? The doorbell rang, and with it came a quiet shift in the air. He greeted each guest with warmth, but his eyes kept drifting back to me. I noticed. I felt it. That look, part reassurance, part question. I stayed seated, calm but alert, like someone watching the opening scene of a play she didn't audition for. Yet somehow, she was the lead. That kind of emotional narrative that unfolds not with words, but with energy. The guests weren't loud. They were intentional. Eyes that scanned, voices that spoke with rhythm. There were no fake laughs, no shallow conversations, just the unspoken awareness that something was in motion, that this wasn't just a hangout. This was a moment suspended between normal and extraordinary. You could almost taste the emotional tension, sweet, sharp, and undefined. He returned to my side with 2 glasses, one for him, one for me. No words, just a glance that said, "You good?" And I was. Because even though I didn't fully understand what was unfolding, I wasn't afraid. I was aware. The kind of awareness that turns a simple night into a provocative story. A story time that doesn't ask for permission, it invites presence. And presence is magnetic. We sat close, shoulders grazing. Every move, every glance, felt like a thread pulling tighter on a connection that was already there before names were exchanged. And if you've ever been in a room where the silence says more than the noise ever could, then you know. This was the kind of unexpected connection that doesn't need explanation. It just needs space to grow. The night didn't explode, it unfolded. Slowly, like the petals of a flower that only blooms under moonlight. Conversations hummed around us, soft and deliberate. But between him and me, it was something else entirely. A rhythm that didn't need music. A dialogue without words. A story time being written in real time, with looks, touches, and breaths held just a second longer than usual. He never rushed. And because of that, neither did I. There was a maturity in the way he moved, the way he waited. Every gesture carried intention. No games. No guessing. Just 2 people exploring an emotional narrative with the kind of trust that only happens when both decide to be present. It wasn't about conquest. It was about connection. That deep, almost sacred kind of sensual tale that reshapes what intimacy means. The lights dimmed. Someone laughed in another room. But all I could feel was his hand tracing circles on my wrist, his voice low, grounding. We weren't escaping reality. We were bending it. Sharing a space where vulnerability wasn't weakness, but currency. I wasn't performing. I was allowing. And there's a power in that, a form of female empowerment that doesn't need applause to be valid. Just choice. We didn't say much, but what happened was louder than any confession. It was a transformative experience, not because of what was done, but because of what was felt. A kind of emotional tension that brings you back to yourself, not just to the other. And as the night deepened, something whispered in my chest, This is going to stay with me. Morning came gently, like a whisper that didn't want to wake me too abruptly. I opened my eyes and felt the silence. Comfortable, not awkward. The kind of quiet that wraps itself around you like a soft blanket. He was already up, making coffee again, moving with the same calm presence from the night before. I stretched slowly, still tasting fragments of that emotional narrative in the back of my mind. He looked at me and said something simple. I don't even remember the exact words. What I remember is the feeling behind them. That subtle nod to everything we'd shared without needing to dissect it. It wasn't the start of a love story. And it didn't have to be. It was the continuation of mine. The kind of sensual tale that doesn't bind you to someone else, but frees you into yourself. As I got dressed, I caught my reflection once more. But this time, the woman staring back at me looked fuller. Not in appearance, but in truth. There was this quiet strength sitting behind my eyes. A kind of female empowerment that doesn't roar, it glows. That's the magic of unexpected nights. They don't promise forever, but they offer a mirror if you're brave enough to look. Walking out of his place, The world looked exactly the same, but I didn't. And maybe that's the point of these provocative stories. These stories to reflect on. Not to label them or control them or tie them to outcomes, but to live them fully. Because when you allow the unexpected connection to happen without fear or agenda, well, have you been there too? So, what are you waiting for? How many unexpected nights have you already ignored? How many quiet voices inside you have you silenced just because they didn't fit into someone else's plan for your life? This story isn't just mine. It's a reflection of every moment you hesitated to say yes to yourself. Every time you felt that emotional tension between who you are and who you've been told to be. The truth is, real female empowerment doesn't come wrapped in perfection. It comes wrapped in choice, in honesty, in the courage to live a provocative story, one that might not be easy, but will always be yours. Now tell me, have you ever been in a situation where one unexpected connection changed the way you see yourself? Or are you still waiting for permission to feel, to explore, to transform? Don't hold it in. Drop it in the comments. Let this space be where stories to reflect on become lessons to live. And hey, don't forget to subscribe, like, activate the bell, and share this story with someone who needs it. Because if this narrative opens something in you, imagine what it could do for them. Let's keep growing, one true story at a time.